Leading off our discussion tonight, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi of California. Speaker Pelosi, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I've been wondering all day what your thoughts and feelings have been today. With Donald Trump returning not precisely to the scene of the crime, but certainly the neighborhood of the crime.
Well, he wanted to give the impression that he had come to the Capitol. But what did they go to, a bar on Capitol Hill or something like that? But whatever it was, what the Republicans and Trump are trying to do is pull the wool over the eyes of the American people. What happened that day was as it was described by Mitch McConnell, by Tim Cook. Or they may have amnesia about what happened that day. But the fact is, it was an assault. It was the scene of a crime of an assault on the Capitol, with Confederate flags flying under the dome that Lincoln built. Lincoln built that dome, Confederate flags. A crime against the Constitution and its peaceful transfer of power. A crime against injuring people, a crime against people, whether it was members or whether it was police officers, law enforcement, the staff, all. The trauma continues. It was a terrible thing when it happened, and it's a terrible thing that they are trying to deny it. This is revisionist history. This is whitewashing, as you say, but it is pulling the wool over the eyes of the American people. As far as those people going to any business roundtable, all most of them care about is not paying taxes. They'll put up with anything so they don't have to have taxes. As I call to your attention, I know you know, that the only major piece of legislation that was passed by the Republicans and Donald Trump when they and he were in power was one bill, a tax bill that gave 83% of the benefits to the top 1%. 83%, adding $2 trillion, not million, not billion, $1 trillion to the national debt. And then they come when we are trying to negotiate a budget deal and say, we really can't afford to do what you want to do for women, infant, and children in terms of food and the rest, because you know that's going to add to the national debt. It's just appalling. Have they no shame? The classic question of the 20th century. It applies to them now.
Speaker Pelosi, you're, I think, uniquely positioned to comment on this phenomenon that I've been wondering about during the Trump years. Watching the collapse of the male ego in that institution where you started as a freshman member of the House, you were surrounded all day in a culture controlled by the male ego, these very powerful committee chairmen who, for ego reasons and other reasons, but definitely for ego reasons, would fight any slight incursion into their jurisdiction, or there's all sorts of jealousies involved that you know about, that I know about, in the House, in the Senate. And we could see that male ego energy running wild around the place, most of the time in an unproductive, negative way that got in the way of progress. And so it has astonished me. It has astonished me that among, and I mean this as a male ego issue, that among Republican men in the Senate and in the House, male ego somehow disappeared. And I don't think social psychology has ever seen a phenomenon like this before in the history of the study of male ego.
Well, as I said, we don't agonize, we organize. I don't agonize over their mostly insecurities, as you describe it. But understand this. This guy, you know, is a former president. He is a master of projection. Everything he says about somebody else, whether it's a judge in the courtroom, a witness, a juror, a member of Congress, a woman, an opponent in an election, everything he says is a projection of his own shortcomings. Crooked this person, he's crooked. Lazy this person, he's lazy. Name any subject that you can name. Wacky this person. He knows he's wacky. He knows he's an imposter. So if we're going to do psychoanalysis of them, I think we have to have them in person in front of some healthcare professionals. But I do wish there would be an intervention from his family, assuming they love him beyond the resources, assuming that they love him, that they would intervene, that the Republican Party would have an intervention. They have become a cult to a thug, and that is really a tragedy for the grand old party and what they were. So I really then going into insecurities, really, you know, the insecurities that I'm concerned about are of some of the voters out there who fall for his line. But I'm here tonight to say to you, on this day when he tried to return to the scene of the crime, he didn't dare come to the Capitol, as he didn't dare come to the Capitol on January 6th. But we cannot let this be whitewashed. This is a disservice to the vision of our founders for a democracy, the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform who have fought for our freedom that he wants to dismantle, and the aspirations of our children to live in this great country with respect for the institutions and concern about their future. He just doesn't care. But let us forget about him. Let's just talk about unifying the country. Putting forth what Joe Biden did with the Democrats in the Congress, House, and Senate. We had the first bill that we had right away, the rescue package, shots in arms, money in pockets, people back to work, children safely in schools. A child tax credit taking half the children in poverty out of poverty. The bipartisan infrastructure bill. We had 13 Republicans, but that's bipartisan in the House, more in the Senate, I think. But bipartisan bill, creating jobs, the IRA, saving the planet, lowering the cost of prescription drugs, the PACT Act to protect our veterans who may have been exposed to burn pits, the CHIPS and Science Act to make us preeminent in the world and independent for the factors of production that we need to be preeminent in the world. And that isn't any reason to vote for us. We're not saying we deserve it. We're saying we've proven we can get the job done instead of one bill for the richest people in the country. Joe Biden was president under his presidency and our infusion of resources into the economy, 15 million jobs. What's his name? The worst job record since Herbert Hoover. The worst job record since Herbert Hoover. Lowest unemployment for like 40 straight months. Low. Inflation coming down. And when people talk about cost of living, that's a legitimate concern. But we're preeminent in the world in taking down inflation. And what we have also done, while I'm concerned about the cost of groceries, as anybody would be for families, but think about how we've reduced the cost of medicine, of health care, reduced the cost of prescription drugs. In our IRA bill, if you're a senior on Medicare and you need insulin, before us it was $500 to $600 a month for seniors. Under Joe Biden and the IRA legislation, it's $35 a month, $500, $600 a month. $35. So when we talk about the cost of living, we have to talk about the cost of health care as part of that. So again, it's about the kitchen table, the cost of living, women's right to choose, which is an economic issue, as well as a democracy issue. So let's just talk about what is at stake for people in the election, because they don't care. They do not care. They care about the 1%. They don't care about your kitchen table issues. And again, always projecting his own shortcomings onto other people.
Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, thank you very much for sharing your perspective on what's at stake in this election and in the way we govern. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
And thank you for your attention to January 6th. We cannot let them pull the wool over the American people's eyes. Our democracy is at stake.
Thank you.